So for the last session, last but not least, I'm very happy to be with Alexandro and Anderson. Let me just sort my papers out here. Anderson Ricardo Trevisan is a professor of the Department of Social Sciences in Education in the School of Education of UNICAMP in Campinas, where the very memorable event took place in 2019. And Alexandro is also in the Department of Social Sciences in Education at UNICAMP, and an affiliated member of the Brazilian Psychoanalytic Society of Sao Paulo, which we haven't been to discuss Raymond Williams and psychoanalysis yet. Both Alexandro and Anderson came to Swansea some years ago to work in the Richard Burton archives, where the Raymond Williams papers are held. I thought it would be nice in this in conclusion today to just ask them a little bit about that experience, about encountering Raymond Williams, and maybe to draw together some of the threads of our, I think, very rich symposium today. So let me ask you both first to tell me about your first encounters with Raymond Williams and what his work perhaps means to you in terms of your work in education in Brazil.
Hi, Daniel. I'm sorry, my video is still bad, but my voice okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Daniel, for the question and for inviting me for talk about Williams. And before, congratulations you and Eve on the organization and on this important celebration of Raymond Williams. It is a privilege for me. So, and thank you very much, dear colleagues, for excellent presentation before me. Anderson?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Daniel, for this invitation. It's a very, very pleasure to me to be here today. It's a great day. I've learned a lot listening to my dear colleagues. I always learn so much in these opportunities. And it's very good to have this talk today. And Alexandro will talk more than me because he's the real authority here in Raymond Williams. I had some experience to exchange with you, so he will talk about his experience, and I will complement as I think it's important to say things I think it's important to say about my own experience in this way of research.
Okay, Daniel, for start the answer. I met Raymond Williams, features of his life and work at the certain point during my graduation in social science at UNESP in Marília, between 1998 and 2001. I started to study his work more closely in my master's in sociology in 2002 at University of São Paulo, when I met Maria Elisa Sevasco's work and was able to be her student in a course on Frederick Jameson. Williams, as noted, was not the object of study in the classes, but contact with a specialist in Williams was essential. After that, Williams continued to be a reference for me in my PhD in sociology in 2008, also at the University of São Paulo. But the deepest contact took place when I finished my doctorate and I went to Maria Elisa Sevasco to do a postdoctoral course on Antonio Cândido and Raymond Williams. The postdoctoral course didn't happen, but Maria Elisa Sevasco helped me build the project, which was carried out when I joined as a professor at UNICAMP between 2013 and 2014. I became a more careful investigator of its roots in 2014 when I started a FAPESP scholarship project as a professor at UNICAMP's Faculty of Education, which would last until 2019, having dedicated myself to Raymond Williams and adult education, which the result was turned in a book by the name of Raymond Williams and Education, Extension, Tutorial, Curriculum, and Methods. Anderson?
So we are in the same room, so sometimes I can hear only Alexandro, so I turn off the audio, but I think it will work okay. My first contact with Williams, maybe it was in the undergraduation course in social sciences, but I really don't remember if it was a very specific teacher and specific professor. I don't remember. The first contact with Williams that I have memory was with Alexandro's works in masters, because he began to reading a lot of Williams to do his research, and I read his research about country and poetry in Brazil, something like this, and he used Williams a lot. So it was my real first contact with him, and after that, I think it was in my doctorate when I took the sociology of culture course with the professor Maria Arminda do Nascimento Arruda, that when we read The Country and City and some chapters from Politics of Modernism. So this time, that time was my very first contact with the work of Williams, and then stopped a little gap. Then when I became a professor at UNICAMP, I began to develop a research about cinema and education, specific educational cinema in a sociological and historical perspective. And in some opportunity, I flew to UK to do some research about educational cinema in British, and my interest was the cinema from John Grierson and the British documentary in a historical way. And when I went to Swansea with Alexandro, I could read, I could do a deeper work, deeper research about this, the perspective of Williams on cinema and education that I've heard before, something but not really deep. And I found a lot of things that was very important to me. So
you came to the
this
archives.
was the time that Williams became more important in my life, because the cinema and education.
Right, and so you came to the archive to look particularly for material relating to film and cinema.
Segunda questão.
Oh yes.
Yeah. And what about you, Alexandro? When you came to the archives, were you looking for something specific, or just wanting to explore generally?
Yeah, the research process in archive began and over these 7 years, Daniel. As highlighted, I carry out 3 research stays in the Richard Burton archives, 2015, 2016, and 2018, lasted between 10 and 20 days, and carried a set of annotation extract from primary sources, manuscripts, notebooks, letters, and secondary sources, prints, articles, books, which were analyzed during this time, and whose result was the aforementioned book, and which I would like to tell you now, as was the making of this bibliographical production. My first effort after collecting the materials and documents that caught my attention about the teaching of literature in adult education was to check what had been published on the subject on English ground, as I recognized that in Brazil, we knew little of this material relating to Williams and adult education in the post-war period, more directly between the years 1946 and 1961, a period in which he tutored adults within an agreement between Oxford University and the Works Educational Association. So after a bibliographical survey that lasted almost a year, I reviewed and revisited relevant authors and scholars of Raymond Williams and his involvement with him with education inside and outside Brazil. I discovered that not only books and magazines dealing with the subject has been published on English ground, but also in Argentina there were Williams scholars who had also produced some works by the Welsh author dealing with the subject, like Carla said. This bibliographic research does not only show the English and Spanish production on the subject, but also gave me access to new bibliographical sources and places to research. It also helped me discover that in Brazil, we had translated this author, but with specific interest and nothing relating to Williams' production on the education of work. And the last consideration, Daniel, is still on the file. I can't help but to give all the help and support of the staff of the Richard Berto Archives, especially Katrina, for all these years, including receiving me and my research students. I hope they are participating in this event and receive my thanks. And thanks to you too, Daniel, for handling this incredible collection that has done so much for my work with Williams.
And I would like to say some words about this too. Well, so it's amazing. It's like a treasure, a hidden treasure, because the archives, Richard Berto Archives, it's a paradise from Williams studies, because it seems everything is there. It's amazing. So I found a lot of material about Williams and his tutorial classes, the films he wants to show why the films were chosen, how to use in classes, and he created a real method of film analysis based on the discussion, like Maria Lisa said in the morning, in Alexandro who researched this too. But in the lecture, but in the cinema, it's the same. It's discussion about films during the classes with a very special method. It's not a shuffle auditory. It's very scientific, but in a way that makes the students real learn to see the movies, see again, see with attention. It's wonderful. And the archives, there are a lot of material about this, and I must thank Katrina. Absolutely great help that she made for us. She's very kind, and she's very available. A lot. So I could like to say thank you very much to Katrina for all this help in those times. Right.
That's great. I can only second that regarding the archives at Swansea. I'll ask Katrina to say a few words at the end of our session now today. But yeah, just to pick up on something that you were emphasizing there, both of you, you know, Raymond Williams as a teacher, because we think of him as a theorist and someone who influences political thought. But one of the things that comes through, perhaps particularly in the papers, is that throughout his life he was a practicing academic. So you see his notes, you see how he's preparing, you see how the teaching influences the publications, right? So his course on English thought for adult education becomes Culture and Society. But likewise, you know, there's a draft there for a course on Marxist theory in the 1960s. A long time before he's actually writing Marxism and literature. So a lot of his writing seems to have emerged from his teaching, which of course speaks directly to the kind of research that you've been doing in relation to education. Let me just broaden things a little bit then with the next question in relation to the current moment. You know, we've heard already today a few times about the situation in Brazil. Bolsonaro and Boris Johnson are comparable figures in some ways. In fact, I mean, as I was preparing this, Boris Johnson is turning to Bolsonaro for, I think, food supplies after Brexit. You know, there's a literal contact being made. But I wonder what is it like to be an academic in Brazil today? I mean, give us a sense of that.
So, Daniel, it's an important question, but I think Anderson has important points of this subject, and your colleagues have already emphasized decisive points about our current political situation. So I will just to say, out Bolsonaro.
It's fine. Out Bolsonaro, it's would be to be good enough, but he's still there. So then it's a complicated question, but I think Bojo and Boris Johnson and Bolsonaro they're comparable in so many levels. But I don't know if I am very qualified to speak on this topic with very quality, but I will try. About Boris Johnson claim about food, I heard about it, but after I read too that people saying that this is not effective. Boris Johnson said, no, it's not true, it's fake news. There's so much fake news everywhere, we never know what's true, what's not true. It's complicated about it. But I think maybe it's a fact. It's a possibility. I heard about it, and we don't know. In the General Assembly from United Nations, the late weeks ago, we see that Boris Johnson and Bolsonaro have a little talk about vaccines, and can you imagine? Boris Johnson said he took the vaccine, and Bolsonaro said no, I didn't do this. So I think our case is worse than your case because it's more complicated. Our extremely right is, how can I say, the worst example. I can't say it, but it's a very bad scenario from us. As for being an intellectual in nowadays, well, what can I say is not an easy task, and my colleagues in here can talk after about their own experience, but it's difficult in many levels too. But I think one of the biggest problems is practical problems that about the huge cuts to scientific research at all levels, since the undergraduate until becoming a professor. There's no money to do research, and there's no a program of to valorize this kind of work. Our job is not a value to society nowadays. It's complicated. But I think at public university in São Paulo, everyone here is working in São Paulo. It's a rich state, so it's easier for us. We can't say it's terrible. We have a good way to work. We can talk what we want in classes and in our researches. We can teach the way we want to teach. So there's no police after us to say don't say that. So maybe it's not the role, it's a kind of oasis, but our situation is bad but not tragical. For example, like I think the private sectors or in the basic education is the real problem, because the politicals of development of the syllabus and other things. In this case, there were a real policy to try to cut the things the teachers can talk to the children. So it's hard to say about gender relations. It's hard to say about race or ethnic issues and inequality. So in the basic education, the scenario is worse than the university, the public university. But it's hard in any way. It's hard for us to. In other hand, it's something is good. I believe something is good. In the past, I think, and I teach not so long time ago. I became a professor, but in the past, when we talked in classes about the importance of democracy, it was, I think it was a little abstract for the students, because democracy for the young people is a fact, is a given. They take for granted the democracy. Today, when we talk about democracy and the risk of lose the democracy, students pay attention and say, wow, this is really important. So in this scenario, I think Williams grows more and become more important than ever to talk to students in a language and in a way that touch the students more than before, I think, because the actuality, that the way we are living with our risk of the democracy is paying. So I think it's like this. I don't know if I express how much I felt, because in English it's very difficult to think. Even I wrote, but I think in the end, if we had time, our colleagues can say about their experience being an intellectual in Brazil. I think we have a good talk about this if we can.
Yeah, no, that's very clear, Anderson, and interesting, and picking up on some of the things we've said already. The distinction that Hugo was making between the old and the new left, or the new left and the new left, you know, the generation of Raymond Williams and E.P. Thompson versus Perry Anderson and Tom Nairn and that generation. Well, I mean, the big difference between them really is that the earlier generation fought in the Second World War, and Raymond Williams says himself, you know, that we couldn't trivialize politics and not see how important politics is. Politics came along, picked me up, and made me a tank commander in northern France. You know, the immediacy of that experience, it certainly colored, I think, everything they did afterwards, and the way they thought about the relationship between theory and practice along the lines that Anna was discussing. So you know, moments of heightened tension are ones where perhaps, you know, the works of that generation come back with particular force, which I think is what you're describing. Perhaps a nicer kind of comparison, or a more enabling one than the Johnson-Bolsonaro comparison, is that between Paulo Freire and Raymond Williams. We mentioned earlier that it is the centenary of both, and you organized an event at the end of August, Alexandro, about both. I wonder whether you would like to say something just about the parallels you see between them, not least in relation to education and educational practice.
Okay. Daniel, I think Maria Elisa Sevasco emphasizes some important points about Williams and education then. I would start this question by saying that in Brazil, there is a gap in Williams' study on education, something I have tried to fill, although there is still a lot to be done. With that, it's natural to get closer to Paulo Freire, who is not an authorized study, but I knew that other professors had made this approximation between them both. The first was the sociologist of education, Michael Apple. In 2008, an article, the name is Raymond Williams and the Role of Critical Culture Studies in Education, 2008. Then Hio Dix, who not only wrote an article comparing Williams and Paulo Freire. The title is the Pedagogy of Cultural Materialism, Paulo Freire and Raymond Williams, 2019. But he also participated in our honors event, generating the two centenary authors, something that happened at UNICAMP in August 2021. About this, regarding Williams' meaning for education, I think that the theme of education is central to this actor as the discussion of culture, as Williams' long cultural revolution also implies a long process of transformation of society through education, teaching, and of learning, as Williams' dream of a more educated and participative society, synonymous for him with educated democracy. In the book I organized entitled Raymond Williams and Education, there is an article with this title that reveals Williams' cultural program to realize a more democratic society, which is a more educated society. That is, this education is central to him. And the type of education that Williams defends, humanistic education centered on the agency of students, I think that's where Paulo Freire comes in support of a democratic education, and with the active participation of students, emphasizing not the leader, the hierarchy between teachers and the students, but the common path. These words are from Williams, but I think Paulo Freire would agree with them that we need to emphasize the common path, because culture is ordinary, and education is one of the means of realizing that culture, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Great. Anderson, do you have anything to add to that?
Not no, Daniel, thanks. I think Alexandro is a big authority in this, and I am very, very glad with hearing it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. Well, maybe a final question is where is your work taking you next? What's
so
where is your Raymond Williams work heading? What are you working on at the moment?
Okay. Today, about my current projects, I am preparing my thesis full professor degree on Williams and education, the result of all this experience that I have described. In addition, I'm currently directing many five researches about Williams in my study laboratory. And I report at UNICAMP. And the book on Williams and Paulo Freire that is being produced and will be published in December include one of its own chapters, is another example of an effort dedicated to spreading Williams today. About if you want, I can talk about the study of laboratory after, if you interested. Anders?
For me, it's the same. I'm very happy with this new book that is coming until the end of the year. I hope we all together. So it's I'm very excited about it. And my research is still running. I intend to go deep in this field of Williams education and films. I hope so in the future to do my thesis of free teaching, and I hope there will be one chapter about Williams. I hope so. So this is our perspective in the medium. How can I say?
Medium term, yeah.
Yes, medium term. Yes, thank you.
Absolutely, makes perfect sense. Yeah, great. Well, we've heard lots of different Williamses today, from the sociological to the educational to the literary. He wrote so much and engaged with so many different fields of thought that it's just interesting to hear all these perspectives. And as you mentioned, these are all accessible in different ways in the archive. And we're joined here, as you see on the screen, by Katrina, who's the indefatigable archivist in charge of the papers and produced the catalogue some years ago that's online. So I just thought I'd invite Katrina just partly to say hello to you guys, but also just to speak to the wider audience out there about what we have. Katrina.
Hello, it's so lovely to see wonderful faces that we haven't seen for far too long. I'll start with the good news is that the archives now are open again, only for 2 days a week, but we are open. We're also able now to take requests for copies. So whilst you might not be in a position to come over, we still might be able to help. It's just been fantastic to hear of all the research that you've been doing, and it just shows that this collection has so much potential. Just the output that Raymond Williams created in his, well, academic, non-academic life, just has this breadth and depth that so many of you have picked up on using either his sort of, final published works or the preliminary copies or his notebooks. I think all of you have used his notebooks, which give those early ideas that he was formulating. The catalogue is available online. So for those of you who haven't used the collection before, that's the first place to start. And on the Symposium web pages, I know that Eve has very kindly included links to things. So have a look on that and it'll get you through. I'm just really keen to find out what you're all going to be doing in the future, because I know there's more in the collection for you to explore, and what you've done so far has just been brilliant. For those of you who haven't had the chance to come and see us, do put us down in the future for when travel is more freely available. We would love to see people finding more things within the collection, and I know there is more in it. Everyone who walks through the door and explores what he wrote always seems to go away thinking, I need to come back again. And we're just waiting for that moment. The warning I would give to any new Raymond Williams researchers is his handwriting can be a challenge. But everyone who's used to his handwriting, and there's always an archivist or a member of staff on hand to help you. We're just delighted when people come to use the collection. That's what we hold these things for, is to get it out there and get it shared. So just thank you ever so much for this afternoon. It really has been wonderful.
Thank you, Katrina.
Thank you, Katrina.
So nice
Good
to
to see you.
Very, very nice to see you, Katrina.
Hope to see you too.
Now I want to go as well.
Please do.
Yes,
Please do.
yes.
I will.
Anna, you should go all together. Let's go to
Yes.
Swansea.
Let's go
The
together.
next colloquium. The next colloquium.
Yes.
There's an
Next
open
one.
invitation. Yeah, we'll have to arrange something once we're allowed to travel freely.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks, Katrina. That's excellent. And Hugo, Carla, and Anderson and Alexandro all testify to the use made of the archive and its international reach. Does anyone have any final kind of comments, Anna or Hugo or Carla, in relation to the questions I was asking Anderson and Alexandro? Anything you'd like to add or embellish?
Well, I can say a few things. I just want to say that I agree with most of the points they made about Bolsonaro's situation, and I do believe that we live in a devastating time, but we are somehow privileged here in São Paulo state, I believe. Mostly, as I've mentioned in my presentation, there's the state funding facility, the São Paulo Research Foundation, that makes it possible for us to travel, to continue our research, even though the federal companies that fund educational grants are in a state of calamity right now. But we hope that next year will be we hope and we have fears, as Anna mentioned in the beginning, but we have to go on. there's always going to be tomorrow, so we're gonna fight in the next year's election, and hopefully
Trump has been defeated, right? So you know, as Anna was saying, all focus is going to be on Brazil then next year, and the focus of Steve Bannon and his types are on Brazil already. So yeah, keep up the good fight. Anna or Hugo?
I just would like to say that an event like this one helps us to get more energy to keep fighting, to keep studying and working on this on the works of these authors, Paulo Freire, Williams, authors that help us to think on the present and to think how to build a more democratic society, which is now in danger in Brazil of Bolsonaro. But Bolsonaro will pass, and we have to keep working to build this society all over the globe.
Yeah. I mean, a number of you during the day have been emphasizing Raymond Williams's optimism. Maria Eliza was emphasizing that in contrast to the Brazilian thinker she was talking about. I'm not quite sure how convinced I am by Raymond's optimism, in that in his novels, he's often not that optimistic. You know, the novels seem to be very much about isolation, alienation, despair. It's a very un-Welsh thing to be that optimistic, and I'm not quite sure how convincing it is. He ends his pieces optimistically, you know, but I think in some ways he is a theorist of defeat. You know, he's the post-war era. He's facing after the immediate post-war Labour government, which was transformative. Everything else, you know, is a failure in a sense, and the various forms of defeat, even the Labour government of Wilson. So he's always looking for those resources of hope, and perhaps that's why he's a useful thinker now. You know, people turn to Raymond Williams when we're looking for looking for those resources of hope, I suppose, or resources on how to deal with the limits upon us. Yeah. Anna?
Yes, I would like to say just that if, although culture is ordinary, this meeting is definitely not.
Yeah.
It's very important for us to be together, to be, for me to be among you. And it gives us a sense that what we are making, our work, is still relevant, even in these very dark days that we are living. So I'm trying to keep Raymond Williams' optimism near to my heart, because I'm not at all an optimist person. I'm always waiting for the worst to happen, and I seriously hope to be wrong. Seriously, and this moment are really very special for us, precisely because of this, because help us to face what's coming. We don't know exactly what it is, but it's going to be very, very hard. Thank you so much again for the invitation, Daniel and Eve, and to all of you for this amazing day. Thank you.